Welcome to the Alphagenix Podcast, where every week we talk to incredible guests from around the world of biohacking, well-being, men's health, and more. Here's your host, co-founder of Alphagenix, Ross Tompkins.
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Dave Lee, the owner of Advanced Fundamental Health, all the way on the other side of the world in Australia, and of course our very own Dr. Max Draper. Welcome, guys. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually in Lithuania, so I'm not that far away from you guys. Not quite the other side of the world, but pretty damn close. But yeah, Australia is my usual place of residence and place of specialty. But I thought I'd come over and experience the sub-zero winter with you guys to get a intrinsic understanding of seasonal affective disorder and vitamin D deficiency, and it's been a good time.
Fantastic. Well, we obviously met in person at the Silverback Summit over in Texas a month or so ago. And super excited, to see where today's conversation takes us. But I guess for anyone that hasn't met you before, hasn't seen any of the stuff you put out there, any content, who is Dave Lee and how did you end up in this men's health space?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm a health coach from Australia, and I have over the last few years become, I guess, hyper specialized in the space of TRT and I guess the cross section between that and holistic men's health. People have been kind enough to refer to me as a TRT expert, so I'll cop that label. And I've also become a writer and a speaker and a lecturer in the last couple of years, and written a couple of books and done a couple of lectures and some talks, which people have liked, which has been cool. And I didn't ever think I'd be in this field. I stopped doing science in year 10 at school. I had no interest in it because I couldn't bullshit my way through it like I could with other subjects. And used to run a marketing agency, used to be a musician, and I had quite a debilitating brain injury in my mid-20s, and everyone told me that it couldn't be fixed and I'd never walk properly again, and swallowed that pill for a while and then thought, fuck it, went back to university, got a postgrad degree in science and worked out how to heal it myself. And a big part of that was testosterone replacement therapy, both from the standpoint of the physiological healing as well as the resilience to actually push through with what needed to be done. And since then, I've been helping men go through their hardships, being the guy who I needed when I needed him, and he wasn't there, so I stepped into that role for others. And it's been an awesome few years. I've got a clinic that I'm working with in Australia now, which is allowing me to work with a lot more people, and I've been mentoring and coaching doctors and practitioners and health coaches all over the world in helping to further the knowledge of getting TRT right, which is not the easiest thing to do, but it's also something which I think we can do a much better job at globally, and I'm very proud to be a part of that.
Amazing. You said something interesting in there about resilience, and how much resilience do you think a man derives from having optimal hormones, and how much is external to that?
Ooh, that's a good question. It's 50-50. But as someone who spent the first half of their adult life up until this point, but I also think it's a bit bullshit to call people adults at 20. Like, we are not adults at 20, but that's a different conversation, right? I spent the first half of my young adult life with low testosterone, so I've been on both sides of the equation. And I can say that testosterone replacement therapy gives you the disposition towards being, I guess, wanting to develop more resilience. It gives you the foundation to be able to develop that, but it sure as shit doesn't do it for you. And that's something that I saw in myself as well as with my clients, is that I think we have this expectation that once we get the testosterone levels up to the level of men who we look up and idolize, we are inherently going to become more like them. And we get the capacity to do so, we get the foundation to do so, but it comes from the habits and the skills that you go through. It comes from the hardships that you push yourself through, whether that is dealt to you by life or you deal it yourself for the sake of becoming more capable and strong. And I think testosterone acts as a multiplier for that. I think it allows you to adapt and respond to stresses in a way that you can integrate them positively and not become traumatized and hyper stressed out by them. But I think that it's very important that you show up and you actually do that work. And if you're looking for a place to start, you do it strategically and methodically, just like how if you want to deadlift 200 kilos, you don't just walk into the gym and put 200 on the bar. You work out what you can deadlift, and then you progressively overload with, different strategies up to that point. And I think it's the same with life. We give ourselves the foundation, we learn the right techniques, and then we push our comfort zone consistently over time so that we can develop a nice track record of wins, and we can start to internally identify as someone who is capable of conquering the curveballs that life throws at you.
I love that. If I think about life in general now as well, we go back hundreds or thousands of years, there was like a rite of passage, wasn't there, for a man? When they went from adolescence to a man, if you like. But now we seem to be making life easier and easier and easier and easier and easier, so people don't have trials to push through. So as you were talking, that's all I could think. Like, are we doing a disservice to people now by making life super easy? And actually, we should be encouraging that fortitude and resilience.
Yeah, hugely. I mean, now you've got a fucking sweet 16 instead of a rite of passage, which you got the polar opposite. I think it's a downstream effect of, where, and this is just my theory, is actually probably someone else's theory that I'm parroting, but I think we're born of a generation who maybe had a much harsher childhood than we did. So I understand why parents want their children to be happy. Like, I get that. And I think that's a nice way of, breaking, intergenerational, I guess, traumas. I think trauma is a bit of a heavy word to use, but that's the term, right? So yeah, we've moved very far away from the rite of passage model. And I think we're now seeing the downstream effects of that. We're seeing the effects of the pendulum swinging too far in the wrong direction, which it has a habit of doing. And we are seeing what happens when people, as a result, develop neurosis. We are now basically developing snowflake syndrome. And I think one of the harshest outcomes of snowflake syndrome is that the consequence of that, in terms of the trajectory of your life shifting, if we feel the subjective stress of very minor events in the way that we would feel them of major events because they're the harshest, most difficult thing we've ever gone through, then we are going to be much less, I guess, disposed towards going out and taking a swing. I think that one of the most important things for a young man to have in his disposition and capacity when he's in his early 20s is wanting to leave a mark on the world. You're wanting to go out and do something difficult and maybe do something that's a bit outside your pay grade and just see if you can do it. And if you fall flat on your face, that's cool. Like it's you want to go out and you want to take that risk and you want to leave your mark on the world and you want to be something bigger than you are. And I think we're losing that now, and we're retreating inwards, we're retreating inside, and we're seeing an uptake in, young men indulging in things like video games and pornography, which simulate the rewards and the challenges of the outside world. I mean, there's a reason why shooter games are so popular. They simulate war. And we're still scratching these itches. We're just finding a way to do it that has less risk, and they're less vulnerable ways of doing them. But because we get enabled by these paths of least resistance, you're only a few button presses away from any food you want, fucking softcore porn, hardcore porn, if that's what you want. Like, I mean, you can get anything on your phone these days with a couple of button presses. And I think if we're not layered in with an understanding of how to navigate that, in terms of understanding that, yeah, there are some great comforts in life that we have. I mean, climate control is fantastic. Uber is fantastic. I love Uber Eats if I'm out and traveling. Fantastic. But I think it's also important to layer that in with programmed adversity or programmed stress so that we don't become too soft, because if we become too soft, life will remain objectively hard as it's always been. I think life is just as hard now as it used to be. It's just different. Like the wolves are in sheep's clothing now. And I think life is still hard. It's just hard in a different way. And I think that if life is harder than you, then you're going to develop depression and anxiety. And if you can find a way to become harder than life, then you can conquer it and you can win in whatever way you deem a victory. And I think that that's the most important thing for men, is to develop capacity and to develop strength and resilience. And I know that there's a whole bunch of ego wank, like masturbation stuff on the internet about, resiliency and fortitude and becoming strong and becoming hard and all that kind of stuff. But it's become a cliche for a reason, because it's fucking important. And there's different ways to go about it. There's different ways to do it. And I think that testosterone is the biological foundation for bravery and courage. And I think that that's one of the antidotes to things that we need these days. Is we need more young men to be brave and courageous. And then we need to be able to develop momentum towards something meaningful. And I think that if you can have those two traits or those two things going on in your life, it's difficult to become depressed and listless because you've got meaning.
I love that idea. That you are I lost my train of thought there. You said something like, if life is harder than you, you will be depressed. But if you are harder than life, then that's brilliant. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what I found for my own journey. And I think when I observe it with other people, it becomes very clear how people can impose their own boundaries and limits and stay within those walls. And then as a result, I mean, if the hardest thing, if you get overwhelmed by keeping your room clean and eating right and going to the gym, like, life is going to get way harder when you get older. Like when your safety net goes away and, you go through if you've been fortunate enough to have your parents alive, when you're an adult and when they pass and, life gets harder and all these different things happen to you. I mean, life is going to keep getting probably linearly or exponentially more difficult as your responsibilities grow as you get older and your expectations grow as well. I mean, you can kind of be a bit of a fucking piece of shit in your early 20s and it's acceptable. Like, you can be a bit of a degenerate at 21, 22 and everyone's like, that's cool. He's young, he's finding his way. But like, if you're still doing that at 40 and you have no skills and nothing to offer the world, like you can't compete with guys in their late 20s when you're 40, like that's when things get really difficult. So I think it's important for guys to understand that like life is going to get harder. So if you stay the same as you are now, that gap between where you're at and where you need to be is only going to grow. So staying the same is actually going to be more destructive. So you kind of have to make a choice. It's either you kind of go, okay, well, this is just the way it is. Life's hard and I've got to, take a swing at this and work on my skill set and capacity to level myself up. Just like in a video game. If you're in a video game and you keep getting killed by the boss, you've got to go grind and work on your skills and get better gear and all that kind of stuff. And you don't just keep going and trying to kill the boss the same way and losing and dying. Like you work that part out. So if life is the same and it keeps dealing you hands that you can't beat, it's like, okay, well, what if these hands are going to keep getting harder? So I need to go and grind essentially. And, people call that going monk mode or self-development or whatever you want to call it. But I think the real magic happens if you can find a way to make self-development like a hobby. Like if you can trade your shitty, degenerative, destructive hobbies for like doing things that are good for you and become addicted to that, that's like the ultimate biohack. So if you can find a way to make self-development a hobby and you can consistently apply yourself to that with a good biological foundation, like you should be able to completely shift, go through a metamorphosis and become a much better, more capable version of yourself. And then you'll be able to have a much more capable swing at life.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in earlier on and say I'm a big fan of Dave Lee's work because I've watched him for a good while now. And I think a lot of what you talk about is developing that resilience. And I think it's almost, you could liken it to this concept that, you want to build lean tissue so that as you get older, you're going to gradually try and maintain muscle mass. It's almost a similar concept with, as you get older, you're going to need to take on more responsibility naturally. You're going to come across more trauma. You're going to come across, like you said about, your parents may die. You might have illnesses within the family. Yourself, you might actually suffer. You're more likely as you get older to suffer from illness. So building that resilience from a young age is so key, isn't it? And I think the problem is because there are these sort of, I don't like to call them dopamine hits sort of stuff, but, like you said about the ease of access to, pleasurable things, people aren't learning to work for what they get ultimately. And it's kind of, where does testosterone come into that as well? Because we know that testosterone has been declining, whether that's lifestyle and, endocrine disrupting the environment, that sort of thing. But I think that the whole psychology of hormonal deficiency as well, because you mentioned that you started with the low testosterone. I certainly experienced that. So 20s, no issue, testicular cancer, low testosterone, and the psychological impact of that going from, no anxiety, no abnormal anxiety, no sort of no issues with stress resilience, to suddenly having a good period of several years of issues. That was quite eye-opening for me. That just demonstrates the role of the hormonal health in psychological development. So if these young guys aren't getting good hormonal levels in their teens, in their 20s, how does that set them up? And it is a bit of a chicken and egg as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it sets you up for failure. And going back to the preventative stuff, and then I'll kind of get to that point. Like, I like to think of it as like lifestyle prophylaxis. Like, I think that's the best way to look at it. Is like, we know how the journey of life plays out. Like, we know how the hero's journey plays out. I mean, we've seen it in like every fictional piece of work ever. So it's kind of like we know what the trajectory is because we can see it in older people. We can see, you know, what's coming in life. And I think that looking at things prophylactically, going, you know, hope for the best, plan for the worst. But yeah, I think that's a really important way to look at it. And I think that not looking at it now and not doing something about it now, I mean, hindsight's going to hit you like a fucking freight train down the path. So like when that's 2020 and you look back and you go, oh shit, okay, if I'd actually started, you know, doing all this stuff and taking care of myself properly, I could have maybe avoided all these, one, diseases of aging, and two, the psychological maladaptive processes that lead you towards living a life that is empty or depressive or not able to handle what life throws at you. I think that could be a pretty uncomfortable thing to deal with. So when it comes to the testosterone as a foundation, I mean, my primary interest in TRT was from a mental health standpoint. I didn't really have a background in like health, fitness, bodybuilding training like most people in this space did. I mean, I dropped out of psychiatry because I was like, well, this is bullshit. Like what I wanted to learn in psychiatry, I wanted to know, what I wanted to understand was, why was so many people in the modern world waking up and maybe not wanting to put a gun in their mouth, but not wanting to get out of bed? I'm like, why? Like, why is that happening? And I like problem solving. So I was like, why? Like, what's the actual neurological pathways for this? And when I got into psychiatry, looking at, you know, learning about how pharmaceuticals work and then questioning things around like safety, efficacy, unknown mechanisms, unknown side effects, all these kind of things, I was like, this isn't learning how to heal the brain. This is just learning how to drug people. And so I wasn't really interested in that. But what I was interested in was when I looked into the mechanisms of how hormones worked in the brain, particularly testosterone, but also things like pregnenolone, DHEA, estradiol, DHT, etc., even thyroid hormone. I was like, oh, this basically how testosterone impacts neurology is kind of like what we're looking for from antidepressants. And then when I was, you know, looking into my own testosterone levels, looking into the testosterone levels of others in terms of like how we're experiencing this decline, going, okay, well, if we match up and to me, I mean, this is such an oversimplification. And, you know, for those who are listening and not watching the video, I'm using my arms to kind of show linear graphs here. But if we're looking at mental health diagnoses going up like this and endocrine disruption going down like this, it was just kind of formed an X. And I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. So yeah. It's so important that guys understand that testosterone is as literally close to your life force as it could possibly be, both in terms of how it fuels your body, how it fuels your brain, how it underpins your psychology. And yes, you're completely correct. When younger men are coming up during adolescence, when they're supposed to be peaking at their, you know, optimal testosterone levels at, you know, 16 to 22, depending on who you ask, when you're not peaking at that level when you should be, and society is expecting you to be, and everyone before you did, and other guys around you potentially are as well, and you're not, I think that has a huge deleterious effect on, again, both the trajectory of where you end up as a result. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in guys who are in their 30s or 40s, and they're kind of like, fuck, like I'm really far behind the 8 ball here and I'm trying my best. And I think that that's a difficult thing to look at. But the other thing that we're seeing is that, you know, these guys are forming 18, 19, 20, 21, and they've just got so much programmed fear. Like they've just, they're riddled with learned fear, which they're getting diagnosed as, you know, generalized anxiety, socialized anxiety disorder, or social anxiety disorder, whatever they want to call it. And at the end of the day, it's because they're lacking this one, testosterone as a driving force, as a motivator to actually give them the reward for going out and doing what they should be doing, but also to act as an antagonist and buffer towards stress and cortisol. And it's basically leading to guys being like, oh, actually, fuck going outside. Let's just find the easiest thing to do to make the most reward possible, and let's stay safe, stay inside, follow the path of least resistance, and just fucking chill. And that's what we're getting a lot of in younger guys who are coming through. They're not like, I want to come out like guns blazing, take on the world, do all this stuff, because they're responding to their internal programming, but then they're also responding to how society is programming them in terms of pushing them away from capacity, away from developing masculinity. I mean, we're told that masculinity is toxic, which is just absolutely fucking stupid. It's the lack of masculinity that's toxic, or it's just people who are masculine and also dickheads. It has nothing, they're not fucking related. Women can be dickheads as well. It's not toxic femininity. It's just people being dicks. And that, I think that 1-2 kind of combination, plus all the biological disruption that we're getting from endocrine disrupting hormones, plastics, pesticides, pollution. I like things in threes. If you were at Silverback, you would have seen me say that. So it's kind of created this perfect storm. And then you go to the doctor and you say, hey, I've got all these symptoms of low testosterone. They check your testosterone level. If you're lucky, it falls within a geriatric reference range. And then you basically get gaslit into being told that you have low serotonin. You go on some Prozac or some Zoloft or some Luvox, whichever one you happen to get in the lottery. And then you just get much worse low testosterone side effects. And the brain is trying to be tricked into thinking that you're doing better than you are, which doesn't work. And you experience even worse sexual side effects and dysfunction than you had before. And guys are experiencing this. They're going through this, and they're becoming frustrated and confused. And it's a very sad state. I really feel for a lot of younger guys, which is why I've made so much content around this, to try to help guys be able to have the information they need to work out what's going on with them and then find a solution.
I really like the line you often use, which is that learned fear, because I think I certainly developed that during even those few years from normality to low T. And so you can see how that learned fear, those psychological sort of processes, the thought patterns, and then you add into that reduced stress resilience, because like you said, you don't have the testosterone to antagonize the cortisol. You get a really bad sort of combination. And it's almost like you can get into that vicious cycle, can't you? Because, you know, it's tough to do things that you know you should be doing because you don't have the resilience, because you don't have the good, healthy hormone levels. And so you just end up in a bit of a vicious downward cycle. You can see that sometimes when guys start on testosterone replacement as well, where they keep questioning everything. And it's almost like they need to get out of that sort of thought process that they you know, that pathological thought process. It's always questioning, you know, do I need, you know, to take more or less? Do I need to change this week? You know, and you just got to give it time to kind of, and it's a big time thing as well, isn't it? Because ultimately these changes to your brain and things aren't overnight.
Like, yeah, like I had a headache yesterday for 5 minutes. Wasn't the testosterone? No, it was just, I was just sick, actually. Okay, well, my left elbow hurt a little bit. Was that the testosterone? No, it wasn't testosterone. No.
Yeah, and I feel for guys going through that, because it's, you know, one thing that low testosterone does is it gives you a huge lack of confidence. And this lack of confidence and this constant, you know, fear state where you're just riddled with stress and anxiety and I guess a lack of the ability to make a commitment, or the lack of ability to see something through. I mean, it's a very pathological outcome, because it's the opposite of confidence. And I think on one hand, you know, men should be cautious about going on TRT. They should, you know, when guys are like, oh, I'm not sure about starting, I'm like, good, it's a big commitment. Like, you should be uncertain. Like, running in all guns blazing is not really a smart idea. But at the same time, it's also, they've kind of got to look after themselves as the observer. And I think that this is when, like, a lack of mindfulness can be quite difficult, is kind of realizing that your own worst enemy, and you could be experiencing a symptom of your low androgenic state that, you know, we're trying to fix. And it's difficult. And that's why, you know, when I spoke at Silverback, I used the analogy of, like, we're like a car that's experiencing itself being alive, like the movie Cars, is that, you know, fixing the mechanical side of things is one thing, but you're also a conscious being experiencing this machine being alive. And, you know, because you've got free will, and because you've got the ability to hijack the system and, you know, do whatever you want to do, that can sometimes work against you. And that can sometimes be where there has to be a lot of coaching and reassurance around trusting in the process and giving it time, and, you know, understanding that, yeah, it might be a little bit of a bumpy ride, and it might be something that doesn't feel 100% familiar, and that's because it's not, and that's okay. But it's also where guys need to really understand and go, hey, maybe I need to get out of my own way here. Maybe I need to objectively look at the facts, you know, work with someone who I trust, make a commitment, make a decision, and see it through. And yeah, I see guys sabotaging themselves all the time. And I think a lot of it is that, you know, original low testosterone learned fear programming coming through. But it's, you know, we can only lead guys to, you know, you can only lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. And that's one of the frustrations of, you know, working with guys, is when they make poor decisions. And they often make poor decisions to self-soothe anxiety, and they make decisions at the time which make them feel better, but then down the track it can actually lead to worse outcomes. And that's one of the difficult things about working with humans. But you know, I like people. So if I wanted to work with machines, I'd be an engineer. So yeah, it's all part of the healing process. It's all part of the coaching and treatment. And I think that's why it's so important that providers really understand what these guys are going through, either intrinsically or through, you know, really making an effort to learn about it, because dealing with hypergonadal men is not an easy thing to take a swing at. You know, it's really not. It's really challenging, but at the same time, it's because these guys are really fucking suffering. So yeah, it's very real. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the unfortunate benefit, I guess, of having gone through it myself is that at the start, I remember just questioning things all the time. You know, is this too high? Do I need to change my dose? And then it was just coming across some of your work, some of the guys online. It's just give it time, you know, and then make tweaks out, you know, but don't change everything every other week. You've just got to, you know, run with the treatment and trust the process and work with the testosterone, which is so significant, isn't it? You know, it's the base. It's not the whole picture. You've still got to, you know, do the, you know, mindfulness, do the exercise, challenge yourself, get out there, all of those things to kind of get the reward, which maybe was lacking when you had low testosterone. I think that's a part of the process, isn't it? You don't necessarily get the reward from doing the good stuff.
Yeah, well, a whole bunch of stuff that is good for you doesn't work properly when the foundation's fucked. Like, I mean, if you're building a house and the foundation's faulty, I mean, the bathroom's just going to keep falling through. It's going to keep falling down. And I think it takes an immense amount of courage for men to go, hey, like, you know that thing like diet and exercise and going to the gym that you tried like 10 times and it failed. It's like, well, this time you're going to need to go do it the 11th time. Like, that's difficult. But I think in terms of, and again, the reason why I work with men is I don't understand anything about women, but I understand men. And the thing I understand about men is that if they logically understand something, they're much more likely to do it. So if you say, hey, go to the gym again, eat right, it'll work this time, good luck. Like, dudes are stubborn as fuck. But if you can educate them and go, okay, well, this is why it didn't work before. It's not because of a lack of trying. It's not because you didn't fucking track your sources properly in MyFitnessPal like your PT told you. It's because your metabolism was actually shot. Your ability to actually activate muscle protein synthesis was crap. Your ability to offset the stress cascade from exercise was crap. And now that all that's fixed, now you'll actually respond the way that you should have responded all along. And yeah, it's still going to be uncomfortable as shit to go through that every time. But you've also got the resilience and fortitude of the fact that you still took 10 swings at something that you failed every time at. Like, you had the kid who fell off the bike 10 times and still got back on and did it. I mean, like, that's impressive. So like, you've got the capacity to go in for the 11th time. And if you understand the how and the why, they're much more likely to do it. And I think that's the kind of thing where there's this nuance to helping guys understand what they need to understand to actually get them to do the things they need to do to get the outcomes they're looking for. And that's where I think so many providers fall short, is that they try to get all the things that you get from doing all that kind of stuff consistently over time, from, you know, optimizing your injection frequency and optimizing your, you know, tweaking your protocol. When it's like, you can do the most dialed in perfect TRT protocol, whatever people think that is. And, you know, people argue about what that is. But if all the diet, exercise, lifestyle isn't in check, it's not going to work. And the difficult pill to swallow is that you have to have been doing this stuff right consistently for a while. And the process of getting on track with that is like an ugly, uncomfortable process, both in terms of how you feel. Like, you know, go into the gym when you're unfit sucks. Like, doing cardio when your cardio is crap sucks. Like, doing yoga when your body's tight is awful. But it's also understanding in terms of being like, well, I got myself off track by consistently, you know, one, you know, it could have been the hand that you had dealt. I mean, your doctor could have told you your testosterone was fine for ages. That sucks. That's kind of their fault, but the victim mentality is not going to help you get out of the hole. So you just kind of got to accept that for what it is and move on. And being like, okay, well, I got myself, if it took me 10 years of getting myself off track, it's probably going to take more than 10 weeks to get myself back on track. And that's okay. But it's also something where it's like, well, you still have to go through that. And I think that, like, one thing that Alex Hormozi says that's really worth looking at is, like, you know, when we watch like a movie like Rocky and it's got that montage, that's like 2 minutes with music and people cheering you on. Like, in real life, it's days and days and days of like grinding and pushing uphill, and like it's ugly and it's not pretty, and there's no one fucking cheering you on. And unless you put your headphones in. There's no music going either. Like, so that process is difficult and it's hard. But I think also that's where it's cool when guys can find communities and they can find content and they can be like, oh, there's a whole bunch of other people going through this, and then there's a whole bunch of other people who've already gone through this who are, you know, cheering me on and helping me forward and leading by example. And I think that's one of the most beneficial things, is having a community of people, whether it's in real life or online, who have shared similar struggles to help you understand and go, cool, yeah, like it feels like it's not doable, but it's actually just a process of putting one foot in front of the other consistently over time. And sometimes you might take one step forward and 2 steps back, but as long as you still keep taking one step forward and moving forward, then eventually, and again, I'm borrowing off Hormozi, but I think it's such a good approach, is, you know, create a pattern, create a strategy that it would be unreasonable if you failed. And if you can adopt a whole bunch of habits and lifestyle things that you consistently stick to day to day, and you trust in the process to get your biology right, it would be unreasonable for that not to work if you just give it time. And I think we're way too impatient with the results here. Like, puberty takes 2 to 5 years. So like, how on earth do you expect your TRT to turn you into the guy that you want to be in 2 to 5 months? Like, that's just stupid. It doesn't follow any sense of logic. But it's also understanding that we want our reward now. We want what we want when we want it. And sometimes life doesn't work that way.
100%. I think that time element is one of the most important parts of this whole process. And I'm a physio by background, and if I liken it to something else I used to see a lot, was people in chronic pain, and they would come to see me. We'd go through a program or a protocol of exercises that were going to help them, and they say, well, how long do I do these for? Well, how long has your pain been there? I've been in pain 10 years. We're not going to undo that in 10 minutes. That's going to take us time to change the body, to change the mind, to change how you are. Okay. But as you said, we're so used to getting things quickly. It's like, right, I'll do 10 minutes of these physio exercises and my pain's going to be gone. Or I'm going to take TRT for 5 weeks and the 10 years of low T symptoms are going to melt away. It takes longer than that.
And you know, using your physiotherapy analogy is like one thing that, you know, and I'm not a physio, but I'm just, you know, this is just as someone who's been in pain before, I can attest to this. Like, if you get exercises to do every day for 10 minutes, you'd probably get better results if you did it for 20 minutes, or if you did even more than that, or if you then modified, you know, what lifestyle patterns led to the pain, or finding other things that could also support these movement processes. And this is what I see a lot, is that guys will adopt, you know, a whole bunch of positive traits, but they'll adopt positive traits and habits that are more around maintenance than actually correcting dysfunction. So, and it would be like with physio. I mean, if someone's got a chronic injury and they're all fucked, it's like, oh, well, I've started doing this and started doing that. It's like, that's the bare minimum of what you should have been doing beforehand. Like, that's just what normal people should do who aren't in pain. Like, the amount of volume of work and intensity that is required to get people out of where they are now to where they want to be is often orders of magnitude beyond what they realize. But it's going, okay, fuck, like that's high up there. But it's like, okay, well, how do I get there? How do I reverse engineer getting there? Starting with the 10 minutes a day. That's great. If you go from nothing to 10 minutes, make that a routine, and then go, what else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? And that's the thing I see with a lot of guys, is they go, okay, I'm going to get my diet together. I'm going to start training. Like, cool. And I'm going to stop drinking alcohol. And then they come back and they're like, yeah, I cut my alcohol down by like 20%. And like, I started going for a walk every day. And like, I've started ordering like a meal prep for lunch. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good start, but that's not going to get you that is not consistent with the outcomes that you're expecting. You're expecting the outcomes of someone who's got their entire life in order together for a long time, and you're barely even scraping 80-20. I mean, and that's being optimistic. And again, that's a difficult pill to swallow, is guys understanding and being like, fuck, there's actually a lot that I need to do here. But it's also at a point in terms of being like, yeah, and we all realized that the hard way too. We all went down the paths of looking for the shortcuts. They all came up dead ends. And if there was a shortcut, I'd sell you that and find a way to make money off it. But there's not. It's all of those paths lead to dead ends. And it's just going, okay, well, where can I start? And then how can I progressively overload this to a point that I need to get to? And it basically means that you have to reconstruct your entire diet and lifestyle around doing things that are in the better interest of your future self. And I think that's the thing that people are used to fucking up, is doing things today and doing things in this moment to make yourself feel good at the expense of yourself tomorrow. And if you can start to look after yourself tomorrow the way that you would look after someone that you love and care about, then all of a sudden you're going to start setting yourself up to be better and better every day. And that's what you need to do if you want to get out of a hole. So I think there's a lot more work than guys realize that need to go into this. But again, it's also stuff that it's like, it's not that hard. It's just uncomfortable for a period until it becomes normal.
Yeah. So you have to ask those hard questions of yourself and take responsibility. And again, this is something that we used to talk about a lot with physio. They'd say, how often do I come and see you? You go, well, you can see me every week if you want, but there's 6 days and 23 hours until you're back again. So guess what? It's on you. It's what you do every day that's going to make the real difference. I can just kind of point you in the right direction, gently nudge you, but it's the decisions you make every day that will actually move the needle. Right.
Yeah, and I think guys need to stuff up a few times as well to learn. Like, I think that's also part of it. Like, I think that's totally it. I think guys need to touch the stove a few times and realize it's hot. Like 100%. That's just part of the male psyche. And I guess the question is, but how many times do you need to touch that stove? Like, how many times do you need to fall on your face to work out a better strategy? And if it's more than a few times, it's like, well, the definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So, I think it's about being strategic, and I think it's about just being like, what's the best play on the board here? And like, there might not be an optimal play, but there's always going to be a better play, always. So, yeah, I think it's using the physiotherapy analogy. It's a great way to look at it, because it is totally about what you do day to day, throughout the day, in terms of what's going to make you a better man, or make you into the version of yourself that you want to be. And I think that one thing that messes a lot of guys up, and they don't like looking at this, but I'm probably guilty of, actually, I'm not going to say probably, I was guilty of it in the past as well. It's how I learned, which is like, we expect to get the results from the work that we haven't done. Like, that's literally the definition of entitlement. And if we have this expectation of being like, oh, well, that guy looks like this, or that guy has this life, or that guy, whatever, and I don't have that. It's like, yeah, but he deserves that because he earned it and you didn't. So, and that's fine. That's the way that's how life works. And you can basically make a choice. Do I want to go, okay, I want what he has, so I'm going to do the stuff that he had to do, or I'm going to settle with what I have now? Either of those options are fine. But if you're unhappy down here, then it's like, well, you actually have to understand that there is a degree of sacrifice that comes with that. And a lot of the time, people don't want to make the sacrifice. They don't want to do the work. They want to find the biohack. They want to find the shortcut. They want to find the thing that's going to allow them to get the reward without doing the work that they need to do. And that's often sold to them for a 20% affiliate code from some dickhead on YouTube, or it's, it's something that people get sold. It's the ultimate marketing strategy. And, marketing sells you shortcuts all the time. And a lot of the stuff that people can buy is great. I mean, some supplements work, some, certain biohack things, they do work, and you do get an ROI for them. But a bunch, like, they don't replace effort and intensity. So if something allows you to focus effort and intensity better, like if you buy yourself like home gym equipment that allows you to apply your effort and your focus properly, or allows you to amplify your effort and focus, great. But if you're looking for like a supplement or a shortcut or a magic pill, like people buy so many magic pills every single day, and none of them are magic. If they were, then a lot more people would be using them. And it can be a difficult, pill to swallow, I guess. It can be difficult to kind of realize that, and to kind of realize, oh, they're all dead ends, and now I've just got to do this stuff that I haven't wanted to do for a while, and I've just got to stop putting it off and do it. But it's also super empowering because most of it is free.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like that idea that what I like to say to guys is that, probably over 90% of this is not going to be found on Amazon. It's going to be, exercise, working on your stress resilience, mindfulness, looking at your thought processes, working on all of these things every day, tidying up your diet and things like that. That's like the vast majority that you're going to get is from all of those consistently being done. And you will slip up. Everybody slips up, but it's just not letting the wheels fall off and then giving up. But I was guilty of this. I've got a cupboard full of random supplementation that I think, that sounds exciting on the internet. I might buy that one. But yeah, it's just that learning that so much of it comes from, like you said, stuff that's majority free, apart from maybe a gym membership. And just putting in that consistently will get you the vast majority of, even the longevity and health span stuff. Even if you delve into that, so much of that is just based on healthy lifestyle, isn't it? You're going to get the majority of it from that.
Hugely. And yeah, I completely agree. And one thing in terms of if people are like, okay, this is all esoteric, what do I actually do? Like I made a video on this the other day because I think it's such a good point. And I'm sure Ross could attest to this from a physiotherapy standpoint, is like, sit down now and think, fuck, what habits do I wish I started doing every day a year ago, and start doing that. And like, that's exactly what I went through. I mean, I had, I've got 2 bulging discs in my spine. I remember sitting there one day being like, fuck, I wish I just did yoga and like mobility work every single day. And I wish I had been doing that every single day for a year. And that was the point where I was like, oh, that would probably have made a huge difference. So I'm going to start doing that now. And then I just never took a day off from it and made that commitment. But so many times we make these commitments to ourselves before we go to bed, and then we wake up the next morning and just go, oh, fuck it. Like the amount, like it's, hitting, if people can just sit here and go, oh, if I didn't hit the snooze button every morning for the last year and actually got up and did the things I said I would do, I'd be in a completely different position. It's not about being like, oh, I'm a piece of shit because I didn't do it. It's going, okay, cool. Now I'm empowered to know what I need to start doing now, so that next year when I look back, I can go, oh, okay, that was the thing that actually I needed to do. And I think if people ask themselves that question and look in the mirror, like I think it's usually pretty damn obvious. Like I've got a lecture, which is Your Brain on Testosterone and the War on Masculinity Part 2, which is on YouTube. It's free. And I go through that and I spell it out for people, but I truly believe that the majority of people, and when I say majority, I just mean 51% or greater, I don't mean everyone, knows exactly what they should be doing that they're not doing, and they know exactly what they shouldn't be doing that they are doing. Just swap those around and do that consistently and you'll be good. And then there's another cohort of people who legitimately don't know how to eat well. They legitimately don't know how much exercise they need to be doing. They legitimately don't understand that you can't have a beer or 2 every night and be healthy. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It just means that you haven't been educated properly in these areas. But it's also where you are stupid if you don't seek someone out to actually teach you these things to be able to implement them. And there is so many guys just need a personal trainer for 8 weeks or 12 weeks just to show them how to train properly, show you what intensity is, show you actually how to, where muscle failure is, or how to squat and deadlift properly. That's something that guys shouldn't be ashamed of or think is unnecessary. It's like, find someone who's got the skills or the traits that you're wanting to have and get them to teach you how they got from where you are now to where you want to be. Like, it's simple. And yeah, I think that's one of the best things that I did was sit down and go, what traits do I wish I'd adopted a year ago? And I'm just going to start doing them consistently every day, so that way myself in a year looks back on past me and goes, oh, thank you. Not, oh, you've consistently just disregarded my well-being for your immediate pleasure, which I think a lot of people do day to day, either consciously or unconsciously. And that's the thing that will lead to a whole bunch of preventable mental and physical diseases.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend people watch that, the YouTube video you referred to that you did, because it really does, in understandable terms, explain, what the role of testosterone in your brain, the role of DHT, and then how that basically links to the habits and the processes that you need to adopt in order to improve how you feel and how you think, and basically your results, isn't it? It's explaining it biologically, which I think, like you said about men being practical, I think that is so useful for them to actually see, that's why things before didn't work, but now I still need to go back and put the effort in again, because hopefully, for example, if I've started TRT, hopefully now I've got the foundation that now these healthy things I used to try will now work, or at least they'll start the recovery process. We're going in the right direction. That's that sort of idea. Yeah, it's a really good YouTube link to that one. Yeah,
completely. And so as I said before, my background's in marketing, and my background's also in punk rock and being defiant. So if someone tells me to do something, I am not going to do it. Or if you tell me not to do something, I'm just like, yeah, I want to do that now. I just purely want to do it because you said not to do it. That's my personality type, and I don't have any shame in that. I like it. It's a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. So, but one thing in marketing that's very important when we're particularly looking at digital marketing is the most effective marketing strategies involve people when they don't realize they're being sold to. So if you one of the most effective ways that I used to do social media marketing campaigns a decade ago is that you wouldn't hit someone from the get-go with like an ad to be like, buy this now. You'd hit them with a bunch of content to, make them brand aware, warm them towards the brand, show them, photos and people wearing the clothes, and you'd warm them over a period so that they would eventually make that purchase themselves. They didn't realize that they were being warmed throughout that process and led towards the sale because you never actually hit them with a buy now, buy now, buy now thing. That's what dudes are like with everything. So I think one of the best things that guys can do is sit down and go, okay, I am going to learn about this so that I can make my own decision and make the decision that is actually in my own best interest. And that, I think, is the most empowering thing for practitioners to do. Is if you're having issues with guys not listening or not being compliant, as opposed to telling them what to do, is going, here's all the information that you need. Here's all the resources in a way that you'll actually understand it. Go and make your own decision, but lead them towards actually making the right decision that's actually in their best interest. And that to me has been, I guess how I've gotten to this point is I've just made heaps of content in that regard, because it's just what works. And yeah, it's very important that guys feel in control of making their own decisions when it comes to their health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understanding why what you're suggesting, may make sense, but actually letting them go away and have a look at it and understand this is the biology, or this is the reasons why we're suggesting it. Make your own decision at the end of the day, because you are, you're in charge of what you do, really. But at least have the knowledge to say yes or no, basically, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, your health is your responsibility, and it's only in your interest. I mean, we can lead you to the water, we can give you the guidance, but at the end of the day, like, if you do or don't comply with the health recommendations that we're making, you're the one that's going to suffer, not us.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's giving people enough knowledge to know where they need to ask for help as well, because I think we all know instinctively that to be the best tennis player in the world, they've got a serving coach and a backhand coach and a sports nutritionist. There are coaches for every part of that role, but we have to get to the point as well where we accept that other people can help us. So whether it's a coach to help with our mental health, or a health coach to help with our TRT protocols, or a doctor to help with the prescription, I have to get to the point where we realize we're not on an island and it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, I mean, people suck at asking for help. And as far as I'm aware, men and women suck at asking for help. But I think that men are particularly bad at it. I'm horrendous at asking for help. And I've always been very self-reliant and self-motivated. So yeah, I completely resonate with that. And I think that can be a big problem as well, is, men seem to have a disposition towards preferring to suffer in silence than show vulnerability and be like, hey, I need help here. And I think that, a hesitancy towards showing vulnerability, I mean, that makes sense. You don't want to expose your weaknesses. That's a poor survival strategy. But it's also getting to a point where it's like, well, maybe a poorer survival strategy is not asking for help, because then I'm truly going to be screwed. And that again, that process is difficult. That process is uncomfortable. That process is anxiety inducing. It's all these different things, but it's like, it's still the best strategic move on the board. And and that's why, and if you guys are listening to this and you're wanting to ask for help, reach out to these guys. That's what they're there for. I'm booked out forever. Don't reach out to me. So I'm not selling anything. But yeah, we are in positions where it's like, okay, like, we do need someone who can be emotionally removed from the situation as well, because we make bad decisions ourselves, because like we just make bad decisions. But if you can get someone who has expertise, who's emotionally removed, who actually has your best interest at heart, who's not just trying to sell you a bunch of shit to line in their pocket, like that, outsourcing that to someone who's an expert is going to have a much higher ROI, both in terms of the financial costs of you wasting a bunch of money on Amazon trying to solve the problem yourself, which is just not going to work out. But also it's going to give you a better ROI in terms of, if you can fix the issue now, the quality of life and the longevity that you can have over the next few years that you'd be otherwise floundering around and suffering. I mean, that can get to the point where it's immeasurable. So I think outsourcing things to people who are experts, it's one of the key things you learn when you're first starting a business, is outsourcing. And outsourcing, like, I see it all the time. I see guys who spend so much time and effort chasing their tails in Facebook groups, trying to solve their own problem. And it's past the point where it's like, oh, I'm trying to educate myself. Now I'm just really trying to play doctor on myself and it's not working. And there has to be a point where you go, hey, this is outside my pay grade. This is outside of my expertise. I need to get someone to help me with this. And then it's about finding people who are going to go, okay, well, who has the expertise? Who has my best interest at heart? And who's actually going to help me get to where I need to go? And that can be tricky. But fortunately, there's good podcasts like this. There's good people like this who you can reach out to. And yeah, I think that can be sometimes a thing that people look back on. And this is what I always get feedback on from my clients is when people are like, I wish I'd done this sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that thing you said before about what habit I wish I'd started a year ago. That's a powerful question to pose someone. And we would all make different decisions.
Yeah. We always think about that at night, don't you, as well? You always think, oh, I've got to stop doing that. Or, I wish I had started doing X, Y, or Z. It's a really good way of thinking about it. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that you find as well, I mean, and, I think the biggest one that people, I was fortunate, I never really liked alcohol much. I just don't like the way it tastes. But the biggest one is people just need to stop the drugs, alcohol, junk food, and start moving more. Like that solves a huge amount of problems. And like what I said at Silverback, and I said it in one of the lectures online as well, is like, just do all the stuff your grandma would tell you to do. Like, it's very simple. Like, go outside more, stop playing too many video games, eat home cooked food, go to bed early. Like that kind of stuff, like makes like they're the biohacks. Like they really are. They're just, you just can't sell them to people. So people don't talk about them. So yeah, the habits one is so big because we are ultimately a product of just our day-to-day habits. And, we are who we are when no one's around. Like, you can put on a facade for your fucking wife or your girlfriend or your friends or whatever, but like it's what you do when you're by yourself and it's what you do like day to day that really adds up over time. And yeah, people are completely guilty of being like, oh, I wish I need to stop doing that. I need to stop doing that. And what you find, from experience is that like if you can just push past the discomfort of the first like 10, 20 days of adopting a habit, all of a sudden it becomes much easier, like way easier. Like cardio sucks if you're unfit, stretching sucks if you're tight, meditating sucks if you can't do it. But if you stick it, if you can just fake it till you make it for a period, and this is where we have to have a higher level of consciousness and be like, okay, like, and this is where your observer has to speak to your ego and go, okay, you don't want to do this, but what you need to understand is the discomfort of not doing this is greater than the discomfort of doing it. It's just that we're front loading the discomfort if we do it now, rather than spreading it out chronically over time. So, but what you also need to understand is if you front load the discomfort now, you're going to net much less discomfort over time, because then it's actually going to start to feel good. And then you're actually going to start the problems that are keeping you awake at night in the first place. And that's where you just have to pull rank over yourself and go, okay, cut the shit, pull your finger out and do what you need to do. And it's not that hard. It's really not. It's just uncomfortable.
I love that. Yeah, cut the shit. Sometimes we just need a boot up the backside or whatever. Just like listen to this. You
got to have a boot up the backside, and you got to be able to give yourself a boot up the backside, because like one thing is like, I didn't have a strong masculine male role model growing up, like, and a lot of people don't, and that sucks. But also like what you can do is go, okay, well, do I have negative role models? Do I have people who I don't want to end up like? What do they do? Okay, I'm going to do the inversion of that. I'm going to do the opposite of that. Use that as I think that's an even more powerful motivator to be like, oh, okay, well, if I do what these negative role models do, I'm going to end up like them, and I don't want that. So I think we can always find a way to blame, other people for our, lack of self-accountability. But at the end of the day, like if you can't keep your promises to yourself, you're fucked, because you can't trust anyone in this world anymore. Like, but you need to be able to trust yourself. So if you can't trust yourself, if you can't keep your word to yourself, then of course you're going to have low self-esteem, because you can't even do the things you said you were going to do. So that it's something where it's like it's difficult to look at this stuff internally. It's difficult to look in the mirror and be like, oh fuck, I don't keep my word to myself, and that's why I'm in the state that I'm in. But it's also empowering, because you're like, well, I can make that change today. Like it's cliche and it's corny, but like it is never too late to fix this stuff. And you can go all in, like, especially if it's something that's made you super uncomfortable. Like there is nothing like getting out of bed. Like, over here, it's, consistently sub-0 Celsius. Like it is fucking freezing outside. I still get up early every morning and do my mobility and do my exercises and go for a walk. Even when I have a call at 5 a.m, I've got a head torch and I've got spikes on my shoes. I've got multiple torches so I can go out in the snow and get my steps in, because those are the routines that I need to adopt to feel the way I feel and live the way I want to live. And I have to lead from the front because I've got a bunch of guys who follow me. And that, I just made it a priority. I made it important. And every morning when that alarm goes off, I do not want to get up at all, especially because I sleep with the window open here. So it's fucking freezing in my room. But I still do it because I didn't do it for a long time. And then I suffered the consequence of that. It's like if you wake up one morning and like, if you're binge drinking, which you shouldn't be, but let's say you still are, sort that out. And you go, oh, I'm never drinking again. And then the next weekend rolls around and you're like, oh, I'm going to get on some booze, get on the piss. And you wake up the next morning, you go, oh, fuck, I'm never drinking again. Like at some point, you should go, oh, I'm never drinking again, and actually never drink again, because you've touched the stove enough times to go, oh, it's hot, I'm not going to do this. And sticking to that for the first few weekends when, you know, either you're going out with a bunch of degenerates or you're staying at home and not going out, like, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's not that hard. Like getting up when the alarm goes off, it's not that hard to just swing your legs out of bed and stand up and just not go back to sleep. Like it's not that difficult. But doing it consistently over time, especially when your willpower is low first thing in the morning or at the end of the day, yeah, it can be subjectively difficult, sure. But if you're finding that difficult, then maybe you need to go and do something way harder acutely so that by association, that's easy. Like I'm a huge fan of training Muay Thai. I am the worst Muay Thai fighter in the world. For the amount of time I've been doing Muay Thai, I am terrible because I've got all these, you know, injuries from my brain injury where plus I just genuinely am uncoordinated. I'm not good at it. But that's why I keep doing it, because it's the hardest thing I do all week. I train with an exceptional coach who holds me accountable, who pushes me to a point that I usually have to tap. And by association, everything that I do over the course of the week is easier. And so that's just set a higher threshold because I'm like, well, I can handle this, but I continuously lean into this and I continuously show up every week and do this because it's important to be able to set a benchmark for going, this is how much stress and this is how much shit I can handle and keep my cool. So that way, when the alarm goes off in the morning or I've got a bunch of, you know, business fires to put out or, you know, whatever happens, I'm like, yeah, this is uncomfortable and difficult, but it's not as hard as violence. And I think that's really important. I think that if it's like, if the hardest thing you have to overcome is getting up early when your alarm goes off, you need to go and do something harder.
Very, very sound advice, and probably a good place to wrap things up. Max, have you got anything to finish up with?
Yeah, I just recommend, he said he's booked out, but I'd recommend his ebooks, the TRT 101 and Beyond, the more recent one that's come out, because there's certainly books that I got and have read in bed, reread as well, just because they're really useful for, you know, just learning about the areas, and it's written in ways that you can certainly follow as well. So it's really handy for people to have that. And they're not, you know, they're not massively expensive either, are they, Dave? You've made them affordable for people.
Yeah, I made them as affordable as I can. I mean, everything else I've given out for free, but I thought it would be good to put something that can give me a bit of a passive income. So yeah, they're 29 Australian dollars, which is like fucking £3 or something with the exchange rate at the moment. And yeah, basically, I mean, I didn't want to call it TRT for dummies because I think that's trademarked and it's also a bit condescending. But I wrote it in a way that it's like, it's written like a hybrid between a textbook and an instruction manual. I grew up playing Nintendo 64 games, so I wrote it like the instruction manual that came with the games I grew up with. Like, these are the controls, this is the basic premise, this is the stuff you need to know, and this is everything you need to know before you start it so that you can kind of work out what's going on. And that's what I wanted to write for TRT. I think TRT doesn't come with an instruction manual, and I think it should, so I wrote it. And yeah, I've got amazing feedback from that. I've sold almost 1,000 copies in the last year, which is crazy for not doing any marketing with it. But it's because, yeah, I think they're good books. And what I did is I basically put all my intellectual property and then I put it in a way that patients can understand. So if you don't understand anything about TRT, anything about science, I wrote it all out so that you can go, here's not just what this is, but this is how I do it. This is all my, everything I'd put in a $1,000 course, I put it in a $29 book so that people can access it. If you're listening to this and because the economy is fucked at the moment, if you genuinely can't afford $29, just send me an email, reference this podcast. I'll send it to you for free because I'd rather people have the knowledge. And yeah, so TRT 101 is how to do TRT, and then Beyond TRT is everything beyond TRT. So it's the pregnenolone, the DHEA, the thyroid, the fertility, the HCG, the estrogen, all the stuff that can get people bamboozled on the internet. It's like a myth-busting book. And for people who do want to work with me, I've got a wait list of about 4 to 5 months, but you can jump on my site and do consults with me if you would like. I've got a private Facebook group you can join on the website as well. And then otherwise, jump on YouTube and search my name on the TRT and hormone optimization channel. I've done lectures on mindfulness. I've done lectures on troubleshooting your TRT, all the war and masculinity stuff I put up there for free as well. So I've got hours and hours and hours of lectures and topics that you can learn about. And thank you guys for your attention. If you made it through to the end and you're still listening, thank you very much for being here with us. And thank you both for taking your time out of the day and dealing with our daylight savings fucking mix up. Glad we still got to do it. And this has been awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dave. We'll make sure all of those links are in this as well, so people can click on it, come to the website, find you on Instagram, YouTube. So that'll all be wherever you're watching this. But thank you very much, guys. She'll let you crack on with your day.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Alphagenix Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss next week's episode. For more resources on Alphagenix and men's health, visit alphagenix.co.uk. Until next time.